Greetings. I'm Suzanne Tidkemeyer. I used to write a column called No Longer Quivering for Pathos for 10 years. And I still cover sometimes the evangelical, quiverful, non denominational, high demand religious world. I like to talk about that. That's my jam. That's my obsession. And last night I got obsessed with this nonsense again. First, let me say these are just my opinions. Don't bully anybody I talk about here at all. I believe in treating people with kindness as much as possible until right up until the moment they make it impossible. And I've talked a lot through the years about things that have happened here. So let's just jump right into this. I'm kind of, I didn't even decide, I decided not to do a live stream today because of the fact that we have had such scanty internet here in Costa Rica because of the problems we're having with the electrical system because they had to take the hydroelectrical off grid because of the lack of water in Lake Arenal and some of the other places. So until that moment where I know that I've got sound internet again, this is going to be it. The other thing is that today's topic is going to be a tough one. It's going to be a rough one. And quite frankly, I am actually kind of surprised that without a box of Kleenex, didn't attempt to do this particular topic. Why? Because it has tons of essay in it. It has uh, CSA. It's got those things. It's got the kind of things that aren't so good. This was one of the two reasons that I stepped down from No Longer Quivering about, let's see, maybe 3 or 4 months after I wrote the initial first piece on this. What am I talking about? I'm talking about some of the organizations that are the worst and their members that are worst to deal with. There were two places that were really horrible to deal with. One of them was Bethel. If you said anything about Bethel Reading, their publicity department would spam you telling you didn't know anything about them, and they were eager to tell you all about them and various things. It's like knit or no. My old church used to follow your teachings and teach them. I've been to your conferences. You are not going to spend your nonsense with me. And their followers would come on and just say the most hateful things. I remember one time being in church and my messenger blew up on my Facebook, and I was looking at it during church and going, what the heck is wrong with people? Because it was like death threats and other stupid from Bethel. But even scarier to me than the reactions of Bethel were the reactions of the new IFB, the new Independent Fundamentalist Baptist Church. It's an organization started around 2005, I think it was, by a pastor by the name of Stephen Anderson out of Arizona, who has called for the death of LGBTQ community members, called for the government to assassinate them. He started talking about why he wanted to see Obama bumped off, and one of his members showed that Obama rallied with weapons. That's how irresponsible, toxic, and just wild this is. I started freaking out in 2020 because there was a man that had his own YouTube channel called The Reason Files 2, named Todd Ferguson. And the Reason Files, there was Robert Tuttle with the Reason Files 1, and there was Todd with Reason Files 2. The problem with all of this was Todd lived in, I think it was um, Columbus, Ohio. Don't shoot me if I'm wrong. And he disappeared one night. He went outside to talk to a man about somebody about buying shoes, and the next thing you know, he turned up days later in an alleyway with the top of his head smushed in, dead. And the local PD ruled it a natural death because he had a wound on the top of his head, and they thought that had happened when he fell down after having a heart attack. Well, all I know is the new IFB, which is run by Anderson, who runs it kind of like a mob boss, even though he claims he's not running it. But we see him taking money from various organizations, other churches in the group supposedly have to pay him money, and defrocking various pastors and putting new pastors in place and various things. And you can see that, yes, he is still running things horribly. And so Todd turned up dead. Days before the body was found, the members of the new IFB were chortling about it and making video after video about him being dead, which tells me they had something to do with it. But since where Todd was living is a whole fail whale, the police just kind of, the coroner said, natural causes. I guess that's what passes for natural causes in that part of the world, just to hold down their murder rate. But I believe in my heart of hearts that he was bumped off by the NIFB. Okay. I have no proof of that beyond the members rejoicing before the body was found. But my creepy spidey sense tells me that this happened because of them. And recently, Todd had showed up at one of their conferences. They're one of the red hot preaching conference type things, and was videoing and put that up on his website. I think they went after him. And every time I would talk about this group, I would get death threats and threats. The biggest threat was they were going to show up here in Costa Rica and shave my head, cut off my hair, because apostates aren't supposed to have long hair, just righteous females. Um, but not just the Todd thing and the death threat stopped me from writing for NLQ. Something else that happened that I uncovered thanks to some eagle-eyed viewers who were pointing me to Reddit and to Free Ginger, and also slipped me the documentation I needed to talk about this and to write about it and to look into it and to send messages to the police department in that area and say, hey, somebody needs to take a look at this. I was sent over 500 pages of documents in support of this. Well, yesterday somebody sent me a link because I'm not watching the, NIFB anymore. I'm busy with my life here in Costa Rica. I do try to do recovery stuff once a week. Taco Tuesdays. Today is Taco Tuesday. And we have to check in with what's going on. And I saw a not completely masterful, let me get my notebook. I dropped it right before I came on. With my millions of airline flights, because we're going to be flying into the States this summer like we always do. And I had to make 10 trillion reservations for us to go every which way. Okay, so back to the new IFB. What happened was this simply, and I can't use the real words because YouTube is going to spank me. And I think that's unfortunate because I think we can use the real words in this because it explains what happened. It was it started as a chat between the teens at Faithful Word Baptist Church. And it also included the pastor sons, the sons of pastors in other churches there. I think Aaron Thompson's son was on that and other ones. And okay, teens are going to go online. They're going to chat with each other, or they're going to say and do things that are just ridiculous. I had my own experience with that with my daughter, but it wasn't anything like this. There was no essay. There was nothing like that. It was just some action that she took when someone started talking about her friends. that ended up creating a community-wide panic. I lived in a rural town of Virginia where people weren't very sophisticated and they just completely overreacted to everything going on. So I get that teens are going to do this stuff, but this wasn't entirely teens. There were a lot of young adult men that were part of this chat too. Pastor Anderson's son Solomon, Pastor Thompson's son was part of it, and many others. What it was is it was a chat that had over 500 pages at one point between the teens and Faithful Word Baptist Church. There were a lot of 13 and 14-year-old girls in the chat, and there were a lot of young men and teens that were considerably older that said things about death, abortion, and the chat was rather abusive. I wrote an article that I'm going to link to in the description here, and it was just the first of the many that when this first came out and I was first looked at the documents, I wrote this before I really knew for sure what was going on. I was still going through all of this, and I'm going to keep off the names because nobody who was involved with it then, some of the families talked to me, some did not. It spun into this huge thing, and it should have gone to the police, which eventually it did. I'm gonna tell you about this article and read you some of the comments of the parents and what was going on. Hey, this I saw this initially at Free Ginger. And if you don't know who Stephen Anderson is, I am gonna emphasize who he is. He's a self-proclaimed prophet, pope of the new independent fundamentalist Baptist church. He was the creator of it. He's the pastor of Faithful Word Baptist Church, the husband of Zazana. And he has a whole big pile of children. I think it was 12 at last count. I may be mistaken. And I couldn't link directly to Free Ginger because this was in their members only section. And I had people sending me screen caps left, right, and center about what was going on. Someone who had been a member of Faithful Word Baptist Church had been directly calling out Anderson on the essay by his sons and others in the church towards the daughter of a man I'm just going to identify as SB. He'd been a huge Anderson supporter for many years, and he had his own website. He was supporting Anderson. And I linked to that in the article, so don't freak out. Just ignore the gun loving, fear mongering COVID-19 denial nonsense on there. He has videos and statuses alleging that Anderson directly covered up SA in his own home, SA scandal. Supposedly, the older Anderson boys had been grooming young girls online for 13, who were in the 13 to 14 age group. The boys themselves were 17 to 23. What ended up happening was instead of Anderson dealing with this in appropriate fashion, he kicked out at least a dozen families, the parents and families of the girls involved. The girls, not the boys who were the actual aggressors in this thing. And a lady named KF, who was tossed out, said she talked about kids that were in 10% of the 500 plus chat pages. And it was just bad. Why am I talking about this now? Because there is another YouTuber by the name of Dead Domain who I do follow sometimes, and I like him. We've had a conversation about this particular incident, about all these boys saying all these awful, awful things to the girls, older boys, younger girls, and how inappropriate it was, and how when the the girl's parents objected to Steven Anderson, he just kicked them out. He kicked them all out, and it was really awkward because one of the families was right either next door or across the street from the Andersons at the time before they bought their new house. Their little three-bedroom, teeny tiny little house they all lived in. So Dead Domain, I didn't notice until somebody sent it to me because, like I said, busy beach walking, smoking the devil's lettuce, and doing various things here that don't involve this. Okay. Um, and I'm laughing when I'm saying smoking the devil's lettuce because that's not literally true. I have real bad asthma. I have mast cell disorder. I sometimes have edibles. I have a prescription for edibles now. So in my dotage, in my old age, I'm getting to be a stoner again, and I don't like it. Long story short, Dead Domain interviewed Isaac Anderson. Now, while I don't give him any shade for doing so, where I do shade is when you let somebody tell obvious falsehoods about what happened. I started taking notes last night. I was up in the middle of the night because my sleep was all screwed up because I laid down to read a book and fell asleep. Old age problems. And I woke up around midnight, I think it was, and couldn't sleep. Started watching the video that someone had sent me. And I started taking notes because so much of what spilled from Isaac's lips was so contrary to everything I saw in that chat and everything that came out later from the families. Okay. So when I go through and finish telling you about what these kids did, I'm going to go back through Dead Domain. Like I said, I watched it till about 25 minutes in, and I was like, oh, hell no. I would have nightmares all night. As it was, I was really agitated most of the night. I didn't sleep well. I've got bags under my eyes the size of steamer trunks. And since I don't wear makeup here beyond lipstick, you can see them. You think these are bad? You should see my new passport pictures. Those are really bad. I look like I'm 90, but that's a passport picture. Okay, so let me go back to the allegations. So they had over 500 pages of this very nasty chat that the boys were saying all kinds of abusive things to the girls. Okay, so Isaac Anderson apparently at some point figured out that KF's son was the one that dopped them in. And he started sending this kid messages telling he was a fat, lazy, pathetic slob and no girls would ever like him. Said that church had totally make fun of him and tell him to get lost because he's a baby. And they were bullying that poor kid so badly. And it kind of goes along with what I'm going to tell you that he told to Dead Domain. And here's the thing. I said at the time, I said, what do you expect when you have parents that are involved in a group that is considered to be a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center and supposedly being watched by by a branch of the government? I don't know. In one of the chats during church, somebody called somebody else the N word. And there's lots of screen caps of this. I've got lots of them at the website. SB said again that that a barely 14-year-old girl wanted to keep continuing dating a guy who'd been talking nothing but sex, including a continuing discussion of choking her out during sex. I don't know what YouTube will and will not spank me on here. And SB pointed out that the pastor preached that children of the church shouldn't even think of dating until they're old enough and ready for marriage to be a prospect. So what happened to that? He has a point because it's the pastor's sons that are leading the way in this. And there were many jokes about RAPE. Melissa Melissa B said, "Wow, the fact that you guys are making justifications for this is very ungodly. These boys think it's okay to joke about beating RAPING and SODOMIZING. But my sister's social media makes you guys uncomfortable. I wouldn't be comfortable with my sisters around these boys ever, especially if alone." Oh, wait, one did make a comment about what he would do if left alone. Ha ha, humor. So everything about this is a highly confusing, toxic mess, okay? Just straight up nasty. And as best as I could sort out, there was that long group chat that involved the teens at the church, the over 500 pages, seemed to have no idea that social media is forever. Isaac seemed to be the main instigator from in the chat logs that I saw. He talked about sex. He groomed the girls of the church for sex, the 13 to 14-year-olds. He was 17 at the time. And he said all sorts of inappropriate things, from discussing paying ladies of the night with church funds after praying for them, and all sorts of just inappropriate things, like joking about RAPE. As a survivor of RAPE, I can tell you how hurtful that is to see people making light of this action because it is something that stays with you forever. Oh, so Solomon Anderson was involved in this as well, it looked like at the time. Now Isaac is saying he was just pulled in for very briefly. I seem to remember that he was on the chat more than just once. And he was over legal age when all of this happened, so he could have faced charges. Um, but there was lots of talk of violent sex, choking, and many other threats, including a few like death threats. Because Anderson chose to handle this by cleaning house, banning from the church the dozen or so girls that were affected by this, instead of holding the boys accountable and punishing them and leaving the victims in the church or getting them counseling, which is what should have happened. He banned them, demonized the problem. SB had a video up on his Facebook page of Anderson yelling at the family of one of the victims who chose to speak out about this. He ordered the victims' families to come to the church, and he basically just chewed them out, up and down, up and down, up and down. It was demeaning and disgusting, and it was ongoing at the time that I wrote this. Anderson said something to Mr. SB. SB, you'd better tell your wife to stop talking crap about my kids or any of these other kids, or she will not be welcome at our church again. I already disciplined them severely, and all the parents involved have taken care of the problem. There will be zero tolerance of bringing up something like this that has already been dealt with, to rub their nose in it or to rub my nose in it. I already know it's horrible. I've already dealt with it. There's nothing else I can do. We talked to the parents, we talked to the whole church about it. Everyone involved has been punished, and it's over. There'll be zero tolerance for continuing to bring this up, and that is not negotiable. Okay, so this is how a CULT leader clamps down on anything he does not want to deal with, particularly things that are SA. Instead of doing the right thing, punishing the people who created this situation, because I really think that most of the fault lies with the boys. Should the girls be punished? Probably some, because it looks like there were some that were eagerly participating, well as there were some that were just skeeved out and ran. But here's the thing: sexual predation starts young. And when I read through this mess, I'm seeing young men that have been released into sexual predation for the rest of their lives. And there usually should be law enforcement investigation of these things. This is not something to be dealt with in house and church. This is something to be dealt with by police and CPS. I know that their particular city, I think it's Tempe, has a SVU unit, special victims unit, that deals with things like this, that can get help for the girls. But that was not offered to them. It was just a CULT leader telling everybody to shut the hell up about it. This is just one of those situations that made me infuriated when it was going on. And you can still see I'm very passionate and upset that this has come out and Isaac has excused what they did. Okay. Okay, SB says, I grew up on construction jobs for my summer breaks from 13 years old on up. I heard kids' filthy mouths and even participated in that talk as I got older. But that normal talk usually consisted of how hot a girl is, our general conquest fantasies and or claims. Talking about choking a girl during sex isn't, especially about a fellow church girl. Talk about sex. Talk about sex when um, RHPC, which I'm not sure what that is, when at RHPC, Red Hot Preachers Conference, when the families meet up, talk about Ladies of the Night at Red Hot Preacher Conference. Talk about giving the gospel to said Ladies of the Night just before sex to qualify for using church funds to pay them. Talk about tying up the girls. RAPE, BDSM fantasies. Talk about SODOMY, even as a joke between the boys of two pastors. No, that's not playground talk for heathens. Let me tell you something, heathens don't even talk like that. Yet alone from pastor kids with church girls. Most of the girls are 13 and 14 years old. Someone else was trying to justify it by saying, there is more to this story than that. Kids tell each other things that parents don't know about. This happened face to face as well, so some of the dirt isn't on those files. And that's very true. But here's the thing: I've overseen my teens' online chats and seen some skeevy things. I've talked to kids. I worked at a children's residential treatment center. We saw it all. And I do not recall anything like this. So this is something unique, and it seems to be unique to this particular church. To think back in my old youth group days, we were confined to holding hands while we skated at the skating park. Not this, but we didn't have in the ancient days of the Mesozoic era social media either. So SB sent this to Anderson. Hi, Pastor. Please read everything. I'm also on my phone at dinner, so please bear with me. I didn't see it on the group, but she showed me now. This is not a good situation for sure. The daughter and wife tried to talking to me about it for the last few weeks since my oldest daughter told me that A was crying to her about the things said to her about her weight. I explained that boys tease girls and maybe he just liked her. No, we don't say that. We do not pull the boys will be boys and maybe he likes you thing. That ever since, you know, Me Too movement, that's been exposed as one of the most toxic, horrible, blaming, excusing things you can say. Now, I understand SB is still in shock over his daughter, but we don't say that stuff. I'm spilling. It's a good thing I have dirty things to do. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap. I've got to fix my washer. That means I got to pull it apart. Yeah. Okay, so we go back to this. A has been going with her sister on weekends to help with her baby, and that seemed to actually be an excuse not to come to church on Sunday and see these kids. Then the group text got really bad, evidently, and the parents saw it. A was added by L multiple times, but repeatedly kicked out most of the time by the boys. She had access to it when she was added. When it got bad, she tried to inform me. I again blew it off as typical teen playground talk without actually reading it. She had access to it when she was added. I posted in the church group post of yours when I assumed it was just teen playground talk. My wife and daughter repeatedly tried to get me to open my eyes and take a real look. It was only after another church member said, I think you need to sit down and take an hour to read it. I hadn't said anything else in the group because I had no idea before, but now can't say the same. This is a horrible thing to happen to you and to the church. However, I have to assume you didn't actually go through the entire chat history, or you just don't want to believe what you saw. And it comes naturally for us parents when it comes to our children. So, right now is the moment in that film, They Live, where Rodney Piper is trying to get his coworker to put on the glasses. However, his coworker refuses and they fight over it. I hope that doesn't sound crappy, but I'm trying to make a visual of the situation. It's bad, Pastor, really bad. And I'm hoping that you do the hard thing and step in front of it. Whatever that is, I'm not sure. But that's when it's going to take for you to prevent the enemy from using this to destroy your church and give those internet idiots, internet idiot here, ammo to attack and ruin every great thing this church has done. Maybe a meeting with yourself and the parents would have been a start. I don't know. It's a suggestion. L and R were at the house, and that's when C posted the message. And guessing it's just hard to see the comments, but people just have no idea, and it seems that you may not have saw the really bad stuff. That's fine that the comments got deleted. Not everyone needs to know every detail. I'll agree with that. The descriptions of the gist, if the horrible discussion was accurate, however, I just hope you take another look. You got to know that F's were most certain to post this stuff public, and then eventually the wrong hands would get it and spread it around, which is why I want you to take another honest look, and maybe with the perspective that it is not your own boys involved. I have no idea what you should do, but you are going to have to do something and deal wisely with this. And this is all followed by screen caps of some of the things that Isaac said that were just incredibly horrible. And there's a lot more rage by the parents. I like to go with the SB post because I talked to SB at some length about all of this when it exploded. When it came to my attention, which it hadn't hit any of the media at that point, when it came to my attention, I started writing about it because if you know anything about me, you know that I am passionate about ending abuse in churches, spiritual abuse, physical abuse, SA. And this definitely is not something that's good that needs to be something that continues on. It needed to be dealt with, but it needed to be dealt with in the right manner. They needed to bring in counseling for the girls who are victims of this. Because clearly, if you listen to the words of SB, you see that his teen daughter was horribly affected by this nonsense. So back to our dear dead domain, who seems like a sweet person the times I've had interactions, and looks at this weird stuff, same as I do. But being different than I and coming at it from a different angle, they don't see the same things I see, obviously. For me, it is my work life, it's my life with my old CULT church that informs my opinion on all of this. I would have liked to have seen the girls get resources to help them deal with this. Therapy would not have been a wrong step, even if the families did not want this to go to the police and to CPS. Having the girls undergo some therapy would have been a really good idea in this thing. So now you have Dead Domain interviewing. 4 months ago, we interviewed Isaac about all this. And in the aftermath of all this happening, Anderson sent his son Solomon, who was over the age of consent, to California as a punishment and to get him out of the way in case parents did go to the police, if the police got involved. One of the things I will say about this is talking to some of the parents that were involved with this, whose daughters were harmed. Many of them had no idea that this was actual crime that had gone on and that this could be reported. They just had no idea. And because they had been kicked outside the enclosure and were now the black sheep, they just did not know which way to turn. And I don't care about the religion. I don't care about the NIFB, the IFB, the Baptist church, the Catholic church, the Methodist church, whatever church. This is one of those things that transcends denomination, that when it happens, no matter how it's happening, it needs to be exposed. So Dead Domain did this interview with Isaac, and I got to tell you, I was very off put by some of the things that Isaac said. Isaac is on damage control here, I think. And part of it I can understand because one of the things that I know about life is when you run up against these circumstances and you live through something you've done that's horrible or you've participated in that's horrible, it's not uncommon to minimize what it is you've done in your own brain so you can deal with it. So you don't have a breakdown and say, yes, yes, I'm an SHIT person. I've done it. You've done it. We've all done it to a certain extent. The difference with me now is I've been through so much therapy and so much exit counseling and so much everything that when these things pop up for me, I will sit with it and think about it a while. Even when someone criticizes me, I'll sit and think about it a while before I decide, yes, it's right. No, they're crazy. So that's really how it goes. But if you don't deal with it, if you have no outlet to deal with things, you don't have therapy, you don't have exit counseling, you have none of that, and you're stuck in a CULT, guess what? That's when your mind rewrites what happened. And that's what I think we're seeing here. I took a pile of notes in 25 minutes. I just want to sound off on those. Kudos to Dead Domain for being open enough to talk to Isaac. He's a better person than I would have because I'm still so angry about what happened and how it was handled and how basically these kids got away with it. I don't care if Anderson says he punished his sons. They got away with it and no therapy was offered. So I'm still angry about that. So watching Isaac rewrite what happened was just incredibly wrong on every level. Isaac, go get therapy. That's all I can say. Therapy, 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 talk therapy. He talked about the people in his father's church, Faithful Word Baptist Church, being weirdos. He actually said weird people. The place is full of weird people. Some decent people, but a whole lot of weird people. That does not surprise me because one of the things I've learned through the years when you have a high demand religious organization like the NIFB or non denominational evangelical churches, you have some really strange characters because they don't fit well in, normal Christianity. So they have to, a lot of times, they have to sneak out and get these stranger and stranger versions of Christianity to fit in. And there's a lot of that going on. Now, Isaac says he is still in IFB, but it sure doesn't sound like him. Some things he's going to say. He said that he went on a ton of mission trips with his father. His sister recently went to St. Kitts with his father, and that makes me sad. My in laws lived in St. Kitts for some years and loved the place. An island that did not need that kind of toxicity. People there are warm and wonderful, just like they are here in Costa Rica. He claims he moved out at got on here that he said he moved out at 21, but I seem to recall later in the interview he gave an earlier date that he moved out. Said that he didn't have a lot of friends beyond a few at the church because most of the homeschooling kids and the homeschooler co-op were just weird kids. And as somebody who's taught art lessons to homeschoolers, I can testify to that. You have some really strange types that embrace homeschooling and end up with kids that are so isolated, like being in a box, that don't know how to interact with anybody. Not everybody ends up that way, obviously, but some do. So his older brother, Solomon, was not involved hardly at all. He was only there for a short period of time in the chats. I don't know how much I buy that, having read through all 500 pages in a pile of documents related to it. And it just kind of breaks my heart as he talks about his bedroom in his parents' home before they bought this new, bigger home. It was a small little three-bedroom home. I think it was like 1,600 square feet or less. There were five brothers in the bedroom. I can't imagine. No privacy, no space to just be alone if you needed to be. You said that the Anderson kids routinely accessed the internet, interwebs, and all sorts of people through in multiple ways. He talked about resetting the router, doing different things, all these burner cell phones, abandoned cell phones that you could log on to the internet and you could access whatever you wanted that you couldn't make calls on. So that goes to show you when you got teenagers, smart teenagers, and obviously these were smart teenagers, even if they did some really dumb things, they're going to find a way. You know, in our house, we dealt with it. We dealt with it differently than this, but we did. And one of the things that I found that was the most effective for punishing teens was not changing the router password. You know what it was? I took power cords to everything, including the router. I made sure that if you were on a device out for a week, I had all the cords connected to anything to do with that device. So you were kind of out of luck. It's the way smart parents do it. And I don't know how smart I am, but I figured that out early. Isaac claims that he was working since he was 14 years old as a plumber, I guess, as a plumber's apprentice for a long time. And that's another thing that makes me sad because of the way that the child labor laws have been eroded in our country, in the US. Let me say, I'm not in the US right now, but I'm still a US citizen. Used to be, there were kids that were harmed all the time, routinely working the cotton mills and all sorts of different work situations where they never should have happened. The Bureau of Labor, where my husband worked for over 20 years, was instrumental in placing things in place like the 40-hour work week and laws regulating when children could work. I think 14 is just way too young to be working, at least full time. But he made claims that his mother, Susanna, her blog, Are They All Yours, was not to make money. Well, explain to me then why she sold modest swimsuits. She sold cookbooks, homeschool organizers, and all sorts of stuff. I think that's disingenuous. I think Susanna absolutely didn't make money. And I don't blame her because one thing I know about this type of life, this kind of quiverful life, you were supposed to wait on the father to provide every dime coming into the household. But that was really hard. And if you did that, you were likely going to go hungry or your children were going to go hungry. I saw so many of this stuff happening in my old church, and it was just very off putting. So many mothers come up with all kinds of different ways to bring money into the household. I salute you, Susanna. And I used to like reading her blog. She wasn't entirely horrible. Isaac said something that to me just was revealing of the way he was raised in this. He said he doesn't like music. Who doesn't like music? Who doesn't like music? I mean, even classical music or hymns, if you think that modern worship music is sinful, or if you think rock and roll and a syncopated beat will send you straight down the slide to the devil. Music uplifts the human soul. I'm a big fan of music. I've sung for years. I used to play in bands through the years. No, 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 no. My life without music would be an empty desert, even with books. And then he said, all Christian music sucks. I mean, he's talking about the stuff like Newsboys, Switchfoot, Audio Adrenaline. That shows you how long it's been since I updated. And he kind of sort of has a point in some ways. I looked yesterday, we have somebody that I follow that does music that was talking about attending winter jams so you didn't have to, and talked about the bands and the music and how worship music was glommed on there and how awful it made it. There is some truth to that. You can't glom on worship music onto a kind of a Christian rock concert. It just doesn't work. It's just awkward for everyone. So he may have some valid points about Christian music sucking, but I don't think in the way he means. Reinforce the whole thing that homeschoolers are weird and they didn't hang around with other homeschoolers as a result. And here was the one that just broke me. He said that all the public school kids he knew were stupid. Oh, no, 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 no. I know homeschooler kids and and kids that were raised in public schools and private schools that all went on to do awesome things, that all went on to have advanced degrees, to make an impact in this world. And to say all public school kids were stupid is just very short-sighted and just very untrue. I don't know what public schools are like where they all live. Maybe they're awful. But where we were from, the public schools were some of the best in the nation. So if you think that people coming out of the public school are stupid, perhaps you should lobby for more funding for your own public schools rather than just throwing rocks at them. And here's the thing that just broke my heart for all the kids in his family. He said that his father was rather uninvolved. He was on the computer for long hours in his little office area, and he just left everything to Susanna. He wasn't as involved in their lives. They didn't see him as much because he was too busy making himself into the internet's Hitler, I guess. Um, Not like Not liked at all in my eyes. He courts controversy. He courts outrage. He's an outrage farmer in the worst way possible. Isaac said he was pro the kind of discipline the pearls do. And he expounded on that and said the most hideously stupid thing I've heard in a long time. He said, "You don't argue with a kid." Who said anything about arguing? I raised my kids without the benefit of the rod, and they all three of them have turned out to be exceptional individuals who hold decent jobs and support themselves well and buy houses and do things like that at an early age. Okay, so his quote was, "Brush your teeth or I am going to hit you." No, he's talking about a 3 or 4 year old child here. And that's how you handle a 3 or 4 year old child. I never had more than a few tantrums for my kids because I had my own ways of handling the tantrums, and they didn't involve corporal punishment like this. There are gentle parenting ways. There's the Love and Logic series. You don't have to give in to a tantrum, and you don't even have to acknowledge a tantrum. Man, I've walked away more times and I've walked away more times when I've seen people starting to go into tantrum town. And it tends to shut it off if they're not getting attention. If they don't get attention for their tantrum, it just cold cocks it because they're trying to get your attention is what they're doing. And better to be than being a dictator, to be kind of sort of like the friendly boss. Okay, we're doing this now. And pull out the toothbrushes and the teeth. And instead of parentifying your other children, telling them to oversee it, or telling the children, brush your teeth, you're 3. You go in there and help them. And Isaac was disingenuous about the amount of messages in that 500-page chat log. He just said it wasn't that many and it wasn't that bad. And he says that it upset the prudes that had a son that just didn't fit in with them, who was only on there for a very short period of time. And said the racist and sexist things they said were clearly jokes. You don't joke about such things. You don't joke about such things. He went on again to say that Solomon was not involved. And that was the point where I just took my notebook. And by the way, there's a good article today on PBS, their website, about why handwriting is a better skill than typing as far as working on your brain. So at this point in the interview, I just took my notebook and I tossed it. And I just shut it down and was like, "Oh, no, 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 Dead Domain, I love you. I love the fact that you are actually listening to this person. I don't like the fact that you are not confronting him on his obvious falsehoods." That always bothers me when I see people platform other people and buy their falsehoods. That's why I'm no longer friends with certain people any longer. Why I don't retweet them, I don't talk to them, I don't talk on their videos, I don't anything with them because I do not believe in platforming people who lie. And if you platform somebody who lies and you double down on their lying, I'm just done. So I went ahead and unsubscribed from Dead Domain last night. I think I had him on, don't show me his updates anyway, because it was mostly about video gaming. And I don't have any interest in that. If it's not Candy Crush, I am not interested. I am way too old for that. I've got to be 64 in less than a month. I never dreamed I would get this old with all the problems I had with my health when I was younger. Never dreamed I would be this old. I thought it was an impossible task. And All I can say is I've seen it all now. I hope Dead Domain does not platform any more guys that commit SA in their words. This whole boys will be boys thing will never die as long as people like that are existing. Steven Anderson wants to be a famous figure of hate. Let him, okay? And I know for a fact that those kids had to be coming out of his household with some very twisted ideas about life, love, partnerships, horizontal fellowship, and other things. And that's sad because some of those things are some of the most fun things you can do without laughing, to quote Woody Allen. And yeah, I'm getting to an hour here. I can tell I'm running out of steam, I'm running out of air. And I have 10,000 loads of laundry to do because of the mess with my washer breaking. I got to make like a mechanic and change out a hose. Joy. Oh, joy. I'm tempted to just sell both of them and buy brand new. Would that be the most entitled gringo thing that I've ever done here? Gringa thing I've ever done here if I did that. And I'm not quite there yet. I try to be nicer than that. One day soon, I'm going to have to tell you guys the story here in Costa Rica about the most entitled gringa ever, part dos. I think I told the first part. A run-in I had last week with some really crazy folks in the Walmart subsidiary that when I walked into a friend's party the other night, there they were. Two of the worst behaving gringos I've ever laid eyes on in this part of the world. And I've seen it all. I've seen people showing up for the week in Easter that traditionally schools have kids go out the spring break where they were dancing in the road and twerking and blocking my car. I've seen people falling out of golf carts, crazy golf cart accidents. I saw during that week one time somebody ran headfirst into the bus. I've seen people say crazy things to Costa Ricans. I've seen a wealthy woman complaining to a hotel staff that the wind was blowing sand on her and it was ruining her beach vacation. And she wanted them to deal with the wind. But these people, they took the cake. And by the end of the night, the lady demanded my phone number. And I gave her my collector number that doesn't even ring here, that I see the messages come into my email. I'm never calling her back. So that'll be upcoming probably later in the week. I love you guys. Like I said, these are just my thoughts. Don't harass anybody. Don't ever go real life. If you could hit like, subscribe, whatever, I really appreciate it. I have a ton of links in the description on this. And I hope to be able to go live again really soon because this talking to a blank screen without people talking to me and asking me questions is driving me dotty.